when you're dealing with insurance companies and you're having your classic car repaired from damage, right? I'm gonna use this beautiful little MG, 1968 MGB. What ended up happening is this poor gentleman had someone working at his house and their dump truck rolled into the garage and stuff fell on it and it caused damage to it. Nothing severe, but enough that it's damaged everywhere. This is a prime example of why if you go to most body shops, they're gonna tell you, we're gonna give you an estimate. This is what it will cost to do the job. And it's up to you as the individual to go through and actually argue and fight with your insurance company. For years, the kind of common ground has been insurance companies come in, give you a quote, you give them the actual quote, and then you haggle and barter and fight and fight and fight. And a lot of body shops are suing insurance companies all the time. And it's a really crazy, horrible way. And what really sucks the most is for the actual individual who had the damage done, because they have a beautiful car. Now they have all this extra stress they have to deal with just to get their car back to the way it was. And it's a shame. You're paying your insurance company to make sure your car is insured. And in this case, his insurance company isn't dealing with it. Obviously, it's the insurance company from the person who caused the damage. But with that company, they're treating this as if it's a used car. You know, a lot of times in insurance, I tell you, by the age of the vehicle. So they're not going to give you a brand new taillight for an older car. They might tell you you have to get a used one because it would be used. And, you know, it's just a bunch of BS, you know, and they're trying to, you know, not bring your cars back to where they were. So on classic cars where you really care and you pay attention to them, it's very difficult because you want it back to where it was. And they're not going to pay us to do that. It's horrible for it to get to the point that body shops are giving up and saying, this is the bill. Whatever the insurance company pays you, you have to pay the difference or you have to fight with them. And that's just a horrible way to have to be for someone, but it's the truth because we also don't have the time to deal with them. We didn't choose this insurance companies. You know, you have the option of going to like a Harity and getting it insured for the value that you see it for to have that insurance. A lot of people don't have that option. So when it's hit by another company, you're dealing with their insurance company, which is not good because their insurance company does not want to bring this car back. Things that they'll do in like a car, and when you're estimating a new car for damage is they have an R&I, remove and install. So you'll have to go through and say, remove and install the door handle, remove and install the chrome trim, remove and install the door lock. Every single piece on here, you have to go through and put that on the estimate because that's stuff you have to do. And yes, on a newer car, 99% of the time when you have to remove something, it's a matter of just popping plastic clips off and easy. But when you're on a classic car like this, you have things that are riveted on, screwed on, blind clips that you have to go through and do. You have panels that have to come off that have to access some of the stuff underneath it because you can't just tape this off and paint it because the paint will bleed up onto the welting or look horrible. So there's a lot of extra stuff you have to do with the classic car and they don't want to give you the time for that. And it's crazy because we've, you know, fight. And I was trying to help this gentleman out as he's getting very frustrated himself. I normally step back from it and don't get involved because it's just, we're tired of dealing with that. But I felt, you know, for the estimate that they were giving him, it was so low that it was just ridiculous because it doesn't even make any sense. And one of the problems that we run into is on newer vehicles and used vehicles, when you paint it, a lot of times you just paint it. You'll put the base coat on, put the clear coat on, and it goes out the door. If there's dust, sometimes you denib it, but sometimes you don't have to do that. And it just goes out the way it is, and you have an orange peel on it. But a lot of the classic cars and the nicer cars, their orange peel is actually sanded down. So they sand it down and they buff it to a mirror finish. And what that is you have, when you spray the car, it has orange peel. You know, people say if you look at an orange, it has those little lumps on it. So if you imagine on a newer car, you have that orange peel, and that's there to kind of hide some of the waves and dings so your car doesn't look really bad. The older cars, you get rid of that. So you keep cutting it until all the orange peel is gone and it's flat. And it's a pretty involved process. You know, like a lot of the newer body guys are gonna say it's not that big of a deal because they just take 1,500 grit on a DA, like a Trizac, and they hit it really quick, and then you 1,500 it, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and buff it, and it's out the door. That's not the same as what you have to do on these cars because you have to cut them a little more aggressively and bring them down a little bit flatter. So it means you have to put a little more material on, more clear coat on there, knowing that you're gonna have to cut it off. And you might go through, say, you know, on a show car, it's a little different. On a show car, you would even cut it a little heavier, 600, 800 grit and up. But on this car, we might say 1,000 grit, 1,200 grit, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. And then we're going to buff it with a few stages and probably polish it. So there's a lot of steps involved in that. To go through and do all that steps, it takes time. It takes quite a bit of time, more time than people imagine if you're going to do it right And a lot of our customers and people that we deal with are very particular about their vehicles. They want it right. And they're going to get down on their hands and knees and look at it in different light and make sure it's right. So it's more important for us to actually spend the time to make sure it's right on that, and we can't cut corners. Insurance companies want you to cut corners. They gave us 2.5 hours to wet sand and buff this whole car after it's painted, no money for materials. And I said, that's insane. Oh, at $42 an hour. So it's $84 to go through and use compounds, polishes, all that other stuff, and then the time to sand this whole car down with 1,000 grit sandpaper, 1,200 grit sandpaper, 2,000, 1,500, 2,000, then you 3,000 and 5,000 R. We do use a DA with that, so it's a little bit quicker, but not that much quicker. It's a lot of work, and they only give you 2.5 hours. And the girl that came here as an estimator, she was very nice, and she sat there and tried to fight with them. She spent an absorbent amount of time here trying to get the numbers to jive, and they just wouldn't let her. They finally said, we'll give you 2.8 hours, $90. $90 to do that work. It's insane. It's totally insane. If you look at it from a shop's perspective, we're exhausted dealing with the insurance companies as well. We want to bring your car back to where it is. We understand that you had this traumatic experience, that it's not your fault, and it's a shame that the insurance companies are beating you up to that point. You have to understand from our standpoint either, if we give you a paint job that they're paying for, if we just clear coat this and send it out the door, you will not be happy with it. So you have to come up with that option. Are you going to pay the difference, or are you going to have it how it is? And it's a very horrible thing, but that's where the kind of the insurance industry has been now with dealing with classic cars, and it's really hard for us to get money. We dealt with Hagerty a few times, and Hagerty was better. The people that came out from Hagerty were nicer people. They tried harder. They understood the process. But the problem that they have is insurance companies regulate the body shop prices. $42 to $62 an hour is what they will give you. And they do that because they want it to be for a flat rate body shop. And you know, the flat rate versus hourly, it's a totally different beast. And I'm not going to really go into that now because I really think flat rate started off as a way for big body shops to kind of take advantage of customers, make more money. The insurance companies kind of push this whole thing. And now we're in this really craziness where these big body shops are actually looking at flat rate and thinking it's not working. They're having issues with it. And they're trying to switch back to hourly, which just can't work because you can't run a body shop in today's market at $42 to $62 an hour. Sometimes you get $72 or whatever, but it just doesn't happen. So it becomes this game of being very creative with your estimates and fighting with these people and knowing it. And these people, these estimators, their job is not easy. And the ones that actually get the money are very talented and good at what they do. And a lot of them have to be pretty damn patient because I don't have the patience to deal with these people and go back and forth and argue just to get paid a fraction of what it actually costs to do. If you were to bring your vehicle, a new vehicle, to a collision shop, most of them say would be flat rate. So they would say it takes an hour to take this fender off. And if their technician does it in a half an hour, great, they do better. If it takes them 2 hours, they lose money. And that's what kind of sets the employees up in the body shop. You have the good employees always are beating the labor rates, and the bad employees don't, and those are the ones who don't make any money. And that's fine for a collision shop because you should get paid if you're better. If you're better and you can take a fender off faster, you should get paid more money. It should be an hourly rate though. It should be the same hourly rate, I feel, as what it would cost to do it. Because if you have $100 an hour to take a fender off and you do it in a half an hour, your labor rate should be $100. I mean, it just should be what it should be. Now, if you go to a restoration shop, it's always time and material. So you pay hourly. So that's why when you go to a restoration shop, their labor rate might be $125 to $225 an hour currently, plus the price of materials with a little bit of a markup because there's a lot of stuff that goes involved in ordering the materials, returning materials, doing the stuff that needs to be done. There's a lot that goes into this, and I just wanted to kind of run through because we get beat up all the time where people say, I want to run through an insurance company, and it's funny because so many people years ago were used to, oh, you could hide a deductible in here and wiggle this around, and everybody knew what was going on. The insurance companies knew what was going on, but it's a $500 or $1,000, and they would be able to factor it in. Nowadays, body shops and restoration shops laugh when someone comes in and even mentions trying to get a deductible or something covered in it because you can't on most of these, especially these things here on a classic car, it's impossible because they don't even pay you what the job is worth. And so that's why you're finding it reverting to people saying, this is the quote, this is the price. If you want us to do it, you deal with your insurance company or pay the extra. And as horrible as it is, that's the way it is now. And we don't like it, you don't like it, but it's the truth. Sorry for this downer video, but please remember to like, share, follow, subscribe, and ring the bell. We have some more coming up.